Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Fungal Zeitgeist, a fungal renaissance. Some might even say a shroom boom, an era where our appreciation of the fungal kingdom and how fungi can be leveraged to help address some of humanity's most pressing challenges. It's very much in the spotlight. However, of course, we're also experiencing a changing climate, an increase in urbanisation, often at the expense of forests and green spaces. Our outlook is more global, with increased trade routes and passenger travel, and the impact of these factors are not necessarily favourable. So this evening, I'd like to share some of the exciting innovations emerging from startups in the fungal space. We'll look at what the drivers are that are facilitating this fungal interest. And also, we'll ask what impact fungi might have and why. So to start with, I'd like to start with a fungi industry map. Now, this has been put together by Mark Violo of Myco Stories. And as you can see, the map is split into 4 main sections. We've got food, we've got materials, we've got health, and we've got environment. And it's a very, very useful map, so I thank Mark very much indeed for this. And I'm going to be referring to it as we work through this evening's talk. Now, to emphasize what I really mean by a fungal zeitgeist, I've taken Mark's map back to the year 2000, so back to the start of the millennium, and I've populated it with companies that were around at that time. So here you can see most activity was actually in the food space, more particularly in the farming space, so mushroom farming. Everyone in this space was cultivating mushrooms. And in fact, mushroom cultivation is one of the most important biotech industries. In fact, today, I think the global mushroom market is valued at around $55 billion US. But there were also companies such as Mycelia. You can see there up in the top left. Mycelia are based in Belgium. They were supplying spawn for growing mushrooms, including oyster mushrooms, shiitake, and of course, Agaricus bisporus. And at this time, biotech was booming. I mean, fungal fermentations provided us with enzymes and with medicines and with organic acids. But it was the advances in fermentation technology that led us to use fungi to produce mycoprotein for human consumption. So it was in 1985 that Marlow Foods launched their corn with, I think it was the Sainsbury's savoury corn pie, a mycoprotein from the filamentous fungus Fusarium venenatum. And so then in health, you can see there was a little bit of traction in the supplement space. Namex was founded in 1989 by Jeff Chilton. Fungi Perfecti, I think, was founded in 1980 by Paul Stamets. And Fungi Perfecti were also working a little bit in mycoremediation at that time, I think using oysters, oyster mushrooms, to look at mycoremediation of oil slicks. But I hope what you can see from this fungi industry map in the year 2000 is that the fungal space was relatively sparse of companies. So welcome to 2023. So this is Mark's map as it stands. He produced this last year. Over 250 companies at least on this map. So I think the big question is, why are fungi making such a positive impact in these sectors? I want to explore a few examples, and I'm going to ask, what are the drivers facilitating this interest? And why might fungi be best suited to help in these sectors. The main focus of the talk, I think, will be in the materials sector. This is the area that has gained most traction. If you remember, there were absolutely no companies working in this arena in the year 2000. I'll dip a little bit into food and fermentation, a little bit into the environment, finally health with just a very brief overview. Sadly, I'd love to talk about all of these companies and all of these sectors, but we do want to get off and watch Richard's programme a little bit later. So we'll try and focus on materials and food primarily. Now, for anyone not familiar with Myco Stories, I'd strongly recommend you take a look at their website, follow them on social media platforms, and fully absorb yourselves in some of the amazing innovations involving fungi that are currently emerging. So anyway, let's start then by looking at the materials space. So what are we concerned about? Well, we're concerned about carbon footprint. Just to put it into context here, global CO2 emissions in the building sector accounts for over 30% of emissions. And if you look at building materials alone, there's an estimated 11% of global CO2 emissions come from this sector. And it's estimated that for every kilogram of cement, so that's the major binding material in concrete, for every kilogram of cement that's made, 1 kilogram of CO2 is released into the atmosphere. And we produce approximately 4.4 billion tonnes of cement globally each year. So this is a problem. The other area that we're concerned about is packaging, so plastic packaging and cardboard packaging. Now, collectively, they account for about 6% of global CO2 emissions, plastics being the most at 5%, and we produce 141 million tonnes of plastic packaging globally each year. So again, this is an area of concern. And more recently, we've been concerned about the environmental and ethical impacts of producing leather from animals. Animal leather has a significant carbon footprint. And although alternatives such as vegan leather have a lower carbon footprint, remember that vegan leathers are actually produced by are actually made of plastics, so plastics such as polyurethane and polyvinyl chloride, and they can take years to biodegrade. They use a lot of water in their manufacture, they use a lot of energy, and of course, chemicals too. So what are the drivers then? The driver is a desire for carbon neutral building materials, packaging, and leather goods. So how might fungi be best suited to help us to tackle this issue? Well, fungi have evolved to consume, and mycelium is key to the way that most fungi live. Mycelium can grow through narrow gaps and empty spaces. It acts as a binder, binding organic matter together by virtue of its network of fine filaments that spread through the substrate. Mycelium can penetrate solid materials using physical force and by the secretion of enzymes into the surroundings. Mycelium consumes organic matter, replacing it with fungal biomass. Now, fungi can break down agricultural waste, such as sawdust and corn stalks, forming mycelial composites. So this is a more sustainable approach to traditional materials. Mycelial composites can be moulded into any shape you like. Here you can see mycelial composite packaging that has been moulded to fit around a wine bottle that's obviously about to be delivered to someone. And the interesting thing here is that for every kilogram of mycelial composite that is made, it's estimated that 1 kilogram of CO2 is actually captured. So it's a carbon negative impact. Mycelial composites are biodegradable and compostable, breaking down naturally over time. Throw them on the compost heap. They reduce the burden on landfills and minimize pollution. So by repurposing waste materials into mycelial composites, we're seeing a negative carbon footprint. This process consumes less energy and it's cheaper to produce. And there are several fungi that are being used by companies in this sector, primarily basidiomycetes. So we see Pleurotus, we see Trametes, and we see Ganoderma species. So lots of companies working in materials. So let's dip into a couple of the ones that I find quite interesting, and just have a look at some of the innovative ideas that are coming out of these companies. So first of all, let's look at packaging and other products. Now, for you budding surfers in the audience, how about a mycelium composite surfboard as an alternative to polyurethane and fiberglass? It's lighter, it uses waste materials to generate the mycelial composite, usually using oyster mushrooms, and it's more sustainable, therefore, and biodegradable at the end of use. And you can see that there are several companies who are now interested in developing surfboards. Ecovative is one of the biggest mycelial technical companies based in the US. But we also see some small startups as well. So El Portobello, COS Surfboards, even individuals like Steve Davis, based in Wales, are working on developing these sorts of materials for surfboards. So, you know, this is certainly something I think that I'll be adding to my Christmas list. And then for anyone interested in beekeeping, how about a mycelial composite beehive? So the Magical Mushroom Company have teamed up with Local Bee. Local Bee are a startup focusing on rewilding honeybees. And they've made, and working together, they've created a mycelial composite components for beehives. It uses agricultural waste. You can generate mycelial composites in a matter of weeks. And the advantage of mycelial composites over wooden beehives is that they actually mimic the tree cavity. The composite is breathable, it has good insulation and reduced condensation. All of these things are very important to the success of beehives. And at the end of life, the components can be fully composted and sections can be replaced as and when the bees leave the hive. And then finally, when we begin to consider our final chapter, then why not consider a sustainably made mycelial coffin? Now, a Dutch startup called Loop Biotech have developed a living cocoon. Now, this is a mycelial composite coffin that actually contains living mycelial composite. So what they do is they grow Ganoderma, natively sourced Ganoderma, with waste materials, and then they dry the mold very, very slowly. And then, of course, you know, once the coffin is deposited in the ground, it's reintroduced into a humid environment, the fungus rehydrates, and, you know, a mycorrhizal party begins. So apparently they have a very good compostable rate. I think it's sort of 2 years as opposed to several. And certainly it's quite a sustainable approach rather than wooden or metal coffins. Mycelial composites are also being used in the home and for construction. So here we see they're being used as flooring and wall panels, and also used to make composites for the speaker casings. So here there are two companies that I've highlighted. The first, Squim, and their Mogu range of mycelial flooring and wall panels. And then Myco Audio, it's a US-based company, are using oyster mushroom mycelial composites in their speaker design. And then we have the Fraunhofer Institute. Now they're actually integrating mycelial composites into speaker components and using advanced 3D printing techniques to generate them. Why can they do this? Well, mycelium creates a tortuous path for sound waves to travel, so it has great acoustic properties. And also it's very spongy, and so it's difficult for heat to be lost. So it's also very good in terms of thermal conductivity. So building materials, the building industry is also looking at using mycelial composites because of their fire retardant properties. Now, why are they fire retardant? Well, fungal cell walls contain chitin. Chitin is a natural biopolymer. It's also found in the exoskeletons of insects and crustaceans. And I don't know whether you've ever tried burning a crab shell in a fire. It doesn't go anywhere. And so this is actually a very powerful factor. Now, the fire retardant properties of mycelium can actually be improved. You can deacetylate chitin, you can remove acetyl groups and create a high char forming chitosan. And there are people doing this, or researchers doing this. RMIT in Australia have published a paper recently on this. And so mycelial composites have excellent fire retardant properties, meaning that they can be used as cladding material. They have low smoke, high char, and they give off no poisonous gases. And you can see here from this BioHM photo, you can actually look at this online. It's a video. They're setting fire to one of their mycelial composites and showing that it just doesn't set fire. It has a high char rating. So there's a potential here for replacing timber, foam, and plastic insulation with mycelial composites. I guess in time, even wallpaper might be considered. So another area where mycelium and mycelial composites are being used are the fashion and design sector. Now this is the process that Myco works use to generate their mycelial leather. And basically what they do is they grow their composite in these sort of scalable, vertically stacked trays with lids, and it takes 1 or 2 weeks for the mycelium to grow. You have the option of actually adding a layer of natural fiber between the mycelial composite. And then the process of harvesting it, squashing it, and processing it further, tanning it, and so on, takes place. And this is really very quick. And there are a couple of trailblazers in this sector. The Italian-based Squim are developing their Ephia range of high-end leather alternatives. And also the US-based Myco works with their fine mycelium range, the reishi range, and they supply Hermes and other high fashion outlets, and they're making shoes, and they're making handbags, and they're making other leather goods. And more recently, they've teamed up with Cadillac, and they've supplied mycelium leather for the Cadillac's all-electric 2x2 Soleil. So you can see that this is a very dynamic space with many new innovations in the pipeline. So I think this is going to be a very interesting area to follow. So to summarize then, this space is gaining much traction, and for want of a better word, the sector's mushrooming. You can see this from the number of companies recognized in the mycelium-based materials space at the 2024 TOCO Awards. Now, the TOCO Awards celebrate leaders in alternative low carbon and regenerative materials. And then, of course, we've got the global community of founders and funders that contribute to climate hack data. And as you can see here, this shows a real sort of global interest in developing mycelial composites for the construction industry. And this is across the world. So mycelial composites have many benefits. And so that's the reason that there's so much interest in this space. Mycelial composites are sustainable, both economically and environmentally. They're versatile. You can make them into, use them for many different things. For cladding, you can make clothes, you can make packaging, and so on. Obviously, the fire and acoustic properties, they have good performance when compared with traditional building materials. They're lightweight and, of course, biodegradable at the end of life. So this adds to them being part of the circular economy, where you're using waste materials to generate products that can then be recycled with very little impact on the environment. At the moment, of course, this is early days for the mycelial composites sector, and there are some challenges. Low mechanical properties, so you couldn't use mycelial composites to build a high-rise flat at the moment, but you could certainly use them as materials for cladding and insulation. And of course, as with any composite, water absorption could be a potential problem. Water absorption means mold, so one has to deal with that, and this is something that I guess most of these companies are looking at the moment, particularly those involved in construction. And of course, sort of standardizing the whole process is important. It's early days, and this hasn't been done yet. So let's move on to food. Right, what are we concerned about in the food sector? Well, we're concerned about climate change. We're concerned about rising temperatures, extreme weather events, and changes in precipitation patterns. All of these things are impacting food production. We're also worried about resource depletion, so the overuse of water, the overuse of land and energy. And this is leading to unsustainable practices and shortages, and to biodiversity loss through habitat destruction. And we're also concerned about food security. We need sustainable, healthy food for everyone. We need to reduce food waste, and we need to reduce foodborne diseases and post-harvest spoilage. So the driver here is a growing consumer demand for quality foods that are made in a sustainable way. So why might fungi be best suited for the job? Well, fungi use less space, they use less energy, and they use less water, and they make protein faster. So if we just compare mycelium grown in a fermenter with cows, for example, if we look at land use, by growing mycelium in fermenters, it's 500 times more efficient per kilo of protein compared to cattle. Similarly, with water, mycelium grown in fermenters to make mycoprotein is 200 times more efficient than per kilogram than 200 times more efficient use of water per kilogram of protein than cattle. And if we look at productivity, so this is what you put in versus what you get out. And we look at, let's say, soy, which is one of the lead competitors. So this is the plant-based protein competitor. Productivity is 30 times higher than soy. If you look at it, takes 100 to 130 days to grow soy, where it can take in a week. You can generate about 1.3 million packs of corn. So productivity is higher. And of course, mycoprotein is an excellent source of protein, containing all of the essential amino acids, and is naturally low in cholesterol. So it's actually very valuable. It's a very valuable ingredient in the vegetarian and vegan diets. So although corn monopolized the mycoprotein sector for years, and actually it's still a multi-billion-pound business, there's now competition, and the mycoprotein sector is mushrooming as we speak. So today, companies are experimenting with different fungi. They're producing many innovative products. Many of the processes involve using waste streams from the brewing industry or the agricultural industries. So generating food from waste in less time, using less water and less energy, making mycoprotein a more sustainable alternative protein to animal and plant-based sources. So let's look at a couple of the innovations in this sector. So the first is fungal-derived yogurt. So Nature's Find, based in Chicago, they're using the filamentous ascomycete Fusarium flavor lapis to make yogurts and cream cheeses. Now the fungus was originally called Fusarium yellowstonensis, I think, because it was isolated from hot springs in Yellowstone National Park as part of a project funded by NASA. But the company Nature's Find, they're using fermentation technology to create a fungal paste that they're using to make this dairy-free yogurt. And I'm certainly looking forward to trying some of this at some point. It's only available in the States at the moment, I believe, but I'm sure it will hit our shores soon. And so making a paste means you can pop it into a 3D printer and create whatever you want. And that's exactly what Mycorrhiza have done with their ProMyc. So this is a mycoprotein paste from Rhizopus oligosporus. So this is the fungus that is used as a starter culture to make tempeh, for example. And in collaboration with Revo Foods, they created a 3D printed vegan salmon fillet. And as you can imagine, as global fish stocks are in decline, this innovation was very timely. And then we have the Better Meat Company. So they're based in the States, and they're producing Rhiza. And this is a mycoprotein from Neurospora crassa, so commonly known as bread mold. So this is quite amazing, from mold to to meat steaks. So they're using riza to make animal-free steaks and other meat-free products. And then My Forest Foods, again, they're US-based, and they're producing meatless bacon. But they're actually using a basidiomycete. This time they're using Parotis astratus, the oyster mushroom. But they're not using the mushroom, they're using the mycelium. And so they grow the mycelium on the surface of wood chips. And then they harvest the slab and slice it up, and they then coat it in wonderful natural flavorings, and then fry it up. And there you can see it looks just like streaky bacon. So consumers are driving these industries because they want high quality foods that are sustainably made. And that's the important message. So now let's have a little look at the environment. We recognise the need to clean up our planet, to remove toxic waste, radiation, and of course, to reduce the amount of plastic waste in the environment. And this is the area that I want to focus on this evening. So humans produce more than 400 billion kilograms of plastic each year, and they accumulate in calm stationary waters, surrounded by ring-shaped currents called gyres, and there are about 8 or so of these gyres around the globe. And just to put this into context, there's currently 80 million kilograms of floating plastic accumulated in the North Pacific subtropical gyre alone. So this is a real issue. And of all the plastic ever created, 91% of it has yet to be recycled. And according to current data, if the world continues with its current plastic habits, by 2050, there will be more plastic in the oceans by weight than there are fish. This is obviously really concerning. So, why might fungi be best suited to help us with our plastic problem? Well, plastics are synthetic polymers. We should say that to start with. I mean, they're often resistant to degradation. They can persist in the environment for decades. When they do eventually start to break down, they form microplastics which enter the food chain, and this is all really awful. But fungi are obviously perfect candidates for plastic degradation, because fungi can stick to surfaces. They produce proteins such as hydrophobins and adhesins. They can form biofilms, and they can penetrate or mechanically damage plastics. They produce enzymes, and some of these enzymes, of course, we know, break down complex polymers such as lignin. So the obvious focus to begin with was to look at the white rock fungi. And a number of white rock fungi, including Phrenicyte, Chrysosporium, that you can see there, turkey tail, Trametes versicolor, oyster mushroom, Pleurotus astratus, all of these white rock fungi can degrade polystyrene and other plastics. Now, polystyrene is used widely in packaging and in insulation. So the search was then on to look in environments where a lot of plastic is accumulating. And in 2017, in a soil sample taken at a waste disposal site in Islamabad, Pakistan, Aspergillus tubigensis was isolated. And this particular fungus could degrade polyurethane. And that's a plastic that's widely used in plastic coatings and insulation. And the fungus degraded this polymer by producing enzymes, producing esterases and lipases, but also through the disruption of the plastic by mycelial aggregation. So then the search moved to the plastosphere. So this is the microbial communities that live on plastic waste in aquatic environments. Now, many fungal and bacterial candidates have been identified as potential candidates for plastic degradation from the plastosphere. Over 400 species, including a marine fungus, P. album, capable of degrading polyethylene, the most widely used plastic. Estimated usage of over 56 million tons just last year. And it's used in packaging, bottles, plasticware, and so on. A slightly more unusual discovery was the ability of Cladosporium halotolerans to degrade high-density polyurethane. So this fungus was isolated from the gut of the greater wax moth larvae. And these larvae feed on the honeycomb wax in beehives. And honeycomb wax has a similar structure to PE. It's rich in long chains of carbons and hydrogen atoms. So it's not surprising that this fungus could degrade high-density polyethylene. So this area is obviously in its infancy, but it's very exciting. And I think what makes it even more exciting, particularly as far as the plastosphere is concerned, is data coming out of the Ocean DNA Catalogue, which has revealed a plethora of fungal signatures in what they call the twilight zone. And it's a zone 200 to 1,000 meters below the surface of the ocean. And so the opportunities to leverage the degradative capabilities of fungi to reduce plastic waste is certainly on the cards. Now, there are a couple of companies that are entering this space, and they're trying to address two key environmental problems, and we'll have a quick look at those now. The first is cigarette butts. 845,000 tons of cigarette butts are thrown into nature every year. The problem with that is that the cigarette butts contain plastics, and the plastics will lie around in the environment for decades. So a company based out in Australia, Fungi Solutions, are leveraging the power of the oyster mushroom to break down cellulose acetate in these cigarette butts. It's early days for this company, but I think the research looks very promising indeed. A second problem, which really came to light following the pandemic, is the vast amounts of PPE that are used and discarded on a daily basis. Now, if you look at a paper bag versus PPE, a grocery paper bag will degrade in about 6 months in the environment. But a PPE mask will take about 450 years. So obviously there's a need to do something about this. And a company called BioHM have teamed up with Bupa, and they are working to develop microremediation processes to degrade PPE. So using fungi to break down the plastics in both PPE and cigarette butts, it's just a start, but the potential is there to greatly reduce plastic waste in the environment, thanks to fungi. So cleaning up the environment is a big driver, but also the health of our planet's soils. Now, we all know soils are full of life. A handful of soil can contain hundreds of miles of fungal hyphae, which act as a microscopic facilitator of soil and plant health. Now, the soil microbiome is as important to our planet's health as our own microbiomes are to our health and well-being. And a couple of companies that have caught my eye are working in this field. The first is SPUN. Now, SPUN is the Society for the Protection of Underground Networks. It's actually a scientific research organisation collaborating with researchers and local communities to map mycorrhizal fungal networks using DNA technology. They're building a global database of mycorrhizal biodiversity, allowing them to quantify biodiversity hotspots and identify underground ecosystems of high conservation priority. And the second company, and this is an ag tech startup that came out of ETH in Zurich, founded by Colin Averill. Fungi are using modern DNA sequencing and machine learning technology to establish which native communities of fungi provide the best benefits for a particular managed forest ecosystem. So what they do is they look at which fungi are providing the best yields in the best time, and then they add those fungi back to manage forests. It's a little bit like a designer soil. And they've shown that restoring the native soil microbiome can actually improve wood yield and quality. And recently, they've teamed up with North America's largest forest seedling provider, PRT IFCO. And their current focus is on loblolly pine. It's a fast-growing pine used commercially through the US. And you can see here on the right at the bottom, there's an image there showing a loblolly pine that hasn't had this designer soil and a loblolly pine that has. So you can see this is very exciting to be able to generate high yields faster and replenishing the ecosystem. So this is all very exciting in the quest to improve planet health. But what about human health? I'm not going to spend much time on this, sadly. I mean, I could give a talk on this. It's such a big area. So there's no time to showcase trailblazers in this section. But fungi and natural product chemists, they have they've been a powerful source of medicines for decades. Penicillin, cyclosporin, statins, they're all fungal derived products. And of course, there are many fungi yet to be discovered, and so many potential therapeutic products yet to be discovered. There's also a growing consumer interest in the supplement space for their sort of perceived health benefits. And there's a resurgence of interest in the tailored use of psilocybin to treat mental health conditions. And drug discovery companies are beginning to mine fungal genomes in search of novel therapeutic compounds. And with many fungal genomes yet to be sequenced and an estimated 90% of fungi yet to be discovered, the potential here is endless. But is it all sunshine and mycelium? Fungi have evolved to consume. They've been doing it for about 1 billion years, and evidence of their insatiable appetites can be seen around the home and in nature. They're rotters. They destroy the fabric of our homes. They destroy the food we eat. They feed on animals and they feed on plants, even on us. And until now, we've lived in relative harmony with fungi. We've managed and mitigated the risk caused by fungi and their desire to consume by employing fungicides and antifungal drugs. So why should we be concerned right now? Well, the world is changing. Global temperatures are increasing, giving fungi the opportunity to adapt, allowing them to thrive and spread in new environments. Deforestation and urbanization can disrupt ecological balance, allowing fungi to enter new environments and affect new hosts. And of course, globalization, such as international travel across the globe and trade routes, can spread fungi across borders. Remember, every time you step off a plane, you carry with you a community of microorganisms. And of course, healthcare has advanced. Patient outcomes following organ transplants and cancer treatments have improved using immunosuppressant drugs, some of course derived from fungi. But the downside is a weaker immune system, which makes the patient more susceptible to fungal infections. Similarly, an overuse of antibiotics can disrupt the natural balance of microorganisms, allowing fungi to take hold. And then, of course, we have agriculture and the use of fungicides to protect food crops from fungal attack. However, the prolonged use of fungicides can lead to the development of resistance in fungi if they're exposed to them in their natural environment. Let's not forget, fungi are opportunistic organisms. So how are these global changes impacting on the spread of fungal disease? Well, let's just look. Ash dieback caused by Meniscyphus fraxinus. It spread on infected ash saplings. It was first identified, I think, back in the 1990s, the early 1990s in Poland, but it has now spread through trade to the UK and to Ireland. Similarly, Panama disease caused by Fusarium oxysporum. It's threatening the Cavendish banana. It's spread in banana-producing regions of the world, and it's spread in infected rhizomes. And it's very, very difficult to eliminate once you've got it. And then human travel, believe it or not, is responsible for the demise of bats in North America from bat white nose syndrome caused by Pseudogymnoascus destructans. Now, people visiting bats didn't realize they were carrying with them this fungus, and this fungus has now spread across many bat populations in Northern America, and I think is actually spreading now in Northern Europe. And of course, the global trade in amphibians back in the 70s has seen the demise of populations of frogs and salamanders. They're facing extinction from the chytrid fungus BD. And climate change is acidifying the Caribbean Sea, making coral more susceptible to aspergillosis, causing bleaching and purple lesions. And of course, you know, fungi are not a serious problem for healthy humans. But when the immune system is weakened through the use of immunosuppressant drugs, or maybe a viral infection, such as AIDS, or when someone's undergoing cancer treatments, these individuals are more susceptible to fungal infections, and mortality rates can be very high because of these secondary infections. And fungi of concern are Candida auris, Aspergillus fumigatus, Cryptococcus neoformans, and more recently, Rhizopus delamere, which is a result of the COVID pandemic in India. So for anyone interested in reading a critique on this subject, actually, I really enjoyed reading Emily Monnison's book, Blight, Fungi and the Coming Pandemic. It's actually a very insightful book, and I think it serves as a reminder of the delicate interconnectedness of the natural world. So, how do we mitigate the risk of fungal infections taking hold? Number one, we need better diagnostic methods. We need early detection so that we can detect fungi and fungal infections earlier. And I think developments using DNA technology combined with machine learning offer incredible promise in this area. But we also need new drugs and new drug targets to combat fungal infections. And in humans, that's not easy because we are evolutionarily quite related to fungi. And of course, therefore, our cell processes are very similar. So this is a challenge. But of course, one of the most important things is we must avoid overexposure of fungal populations to fungicides and antifungal drugs, which can lead to the buildup of resistance. Now, in the final slides, let's see why. So let's take invasive aspergillosis caused by Aspergillus fumigatus. So Aspergillus fumigatus, it's a fungus. It's found in nature. It's found in compost heaps associated with flower bulbs and dead organic matter. It's thermotolerant. Obviously, it survives in a compost heap, which means, of course, it can also survive in the human body perfectly well. We're exposed to this fungus on a daily basis. We breathe probably about 200 Aspergillus fumigatus spores a day, but generally, this isn't a problem to the healthy individual. However, when the immune system is weakened, this fungus can be invasive and can pose a serious risk to health. 3 million episodes of Aspergillus are recorded per annum, and the mortality rate can be as high as 50%. So finding good drugs to combat infection is of paramount importance. And of the 4 classes of antifungal drugs available to treat diseases like aspergillosis, most of them are highly toxic to the human body and are administered intravenously. But one group, the azoles, could be administered orally, and the azoles were very effective. But azoles are also used as fungicides in the environment. And this can lead to the development of resistance in Aspergillus. Now, in 2018, I think 2019, Jennifer Shelton and colleagues at Imperial College London carried out a citizen science experiment. I love these sorts of things. So they asked people to collect air samples at particular times of the year. And what you can see on the map of the UK there are lots of little circles, and all those circles represent where someone collected an air sample. Now, those that are shaded grey are where the air samples actually contained Aspergillus fumigatus spores. And the red dots show Aspergillus fumigatus spores that were resistant to the azole fungicides that were being used. Now, this was obviously a big problem, and a big problem for the patient there on the left. And so the race was on to develop new antifungal drugs. Now, a British pharma company called F2G have discovered a new class of small molecule inhibitors called orotamides. Now, these inhibitors selectively target a fungal enzyme involved in the synthesis of DNA, RNA, and protein. And one of the drugs, alorifim, has been found to be very, very effective against Aspergillus and other molds including azole-resistant strains. Great news for our patient here over on the left. Now, the drug has taken years to develop, tens of years to develop. There's an oral formulation. It's now in phase 3 clinical trials. So this is really exciting and will be very, very much appreciated in the hospital environment. However, Houston, we have a problem. In the US, a new fungicide has just been approved for use, iplufenaquin. And the problem with that is that, sadly, in vitro experiments carried out in Manchester have shown that this new fungicide, when exposed to Aspergillus fumigatus, leads to the rapid evolution of resistance to this new drug, olorofin, because the fungicide has the same target as olorofin. So this just shows how worrying it is. So it's an example of where a fungicide with the same biological target can threaten the effectiveness of a drug designed to target a human pathogenic infection. So it's clear that it's absolutely necessary for agrochemical companies and regulators of antifungal products to thoroughly investigate ahead of approval the potential for negative consequences on human health related to the emergence of resistance. So with that, I want to ask, what does the future hold? Well, we can leverage the power of fungi to help mitigate climate change, to clean up the planet. We can use them in a sustainable way to build, to clothe us, to feed us, creating circular economies by utilising and reducing waste streams. We can use their power as natural product chemists to find new drugs to benefit health and to benefit well-being. And by understanding the intricate sort of interplay between fungi and other organisms, we can begin to replenish depleted ecosystems. Fungi could be our saviours. But fungi cause diseases to crops. They're post-harvest rotters. They threaten our food security. They have the potential to wipe out populations of animals and are the hidden killers of the immunocompromised. They're opportunistic and they're vanguard species. They have the potential to be our slayers. So how do we move forward? We must show resolve in mitigating the risks posed by fungi to animal and plant health, and in particular human health. And we must be innovative in leveraging the phenomenal potential that fungi have to save us and our planet. Our future hangs in the balance. It's in our hands. Thank you very much.